And just as a, correct me if I'm wrong type thing, we have that budget summary. At the bottom, it said projected or surplus based on Mindy's audit. That 590,000.
It's 564,
Yeah.
392 after you net out what we applied in the budget,
Including the 150.
excluding that.
That's what I thought, and that's what I was getting. All right, we are live. I would check in on the beauty
Okay, who's on?
contestants.
Did you see?
Nobody's on. I've gotten no requests for participation. I did send it back out to the budget committee, but no one's requested to come back.
Robin, Kevin.
You may mind if I open a window or two?
No. Yeah.
Actually, I'd open the door if I could figure a way out.
The chair will let you.
You all remember Kevin?
Hi, Kevin.
Hello, hello. How is everybody?
Good.
Hello.
Guys, get chairs.
We got front row?
Yep.
Excellent. Rob has just gone to get his mask so that we can all look official here.
Give us a line of sight to the camera. Resuming the meeting.
Okay.
You guys ready?
He'll be right back in with his mask attire. So where should we be sitting then?
Right here.
Right here and here? Okay.
Either side, will be fine.
You might not want to use that one.
I'm going into real here. Yeah, hi, Rob.
How are you guys?
Good.
Good to see you again.
Hi, Roger. Third year in a row.
Okay.
It's the mask.
Who's the mask?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 3 feet, chest, body, all.
Okay, good.
Good to see you.
You too. You too.
Formalities to go through.
Okay,
And
so
can you move?
we
so
need
the
to-
camera can see us?
we need to fix somehow make the camera here.
Okay, there are no adjustments to the agenda that I'm aware of.
Actually, I'd like to perhaps request one. I'd like to add talking about the newsletter a little bit. If Owen anticipates the tax bill will go up before we meet again. And he's not here to ask that. So that's maybe an adjustment.
He does, but I'll let him confirm that.
So if you could add that, I'd appreciate it.
Are there any citizen comments? You might want to check the YouTube.
Yes, sir. No, there's one person watching.
Is it a budget committee member?
YouTube doesn't tell us who it is.
Oh. No, so they have the Zoom credentials.
All the budget committee members do have Zoom credentials. I have not had a single person request to enter, but watching on the YouTube live is one individual.
On YouTube, not on Zoom.
Yeah, and unless they comment, we don't know
That's
who's
fine.
watching.
That's fine. Just the budget committee's on Zoom.
Yep.
So we know if they're on. Okay. All right, then are we recording this?
Yeah, it's going live on YouTube right
Yeah,
now.
sure, okay. So let me just, I've had a lot of, comments from people since town meeting. Many of them are relatively new residents. And what I'm, learning is, some lack of understanding of the financial management process of the town. So I take this opportunity to do some, education. And one piece of education that we'd like to do next year, Rob, is to conduct this at night. But maybe your participation doesn't have to be at night, but you don't have to be there when we vote, or is it, am I wrong about that?
That's right.
Okay.
Usually what happens.
I'd like to do it at night when we have maximum citizen participation, because I'm getting a lot of comments about this important meeting, which impacts everybody's tax bill. Not being held at the dark of night, it's being held in the light of day. I understand. Okay, so today, what we're going to go through is we're going to look at some revenue sources. And the principal revenue sources are state aid from the town, the homestead exemption, our own fees and charges. We're going to look at the budget that was passed by town meeting. And we're going to add to that budget the RSU 13 assessment, which is in two forms. It's one number, one amount for the first 6 months of the year, which happen to be 1.6 million rounded. And for the second half of the year, it's 1.7 million. So this reflects the fact that they're on a different fiscal year than we are. And then we have the county assessment, which will pay in October, November of 300,000 feet of level. So we add up all the spending requirements. We deduct the revenue sources, and then we add in the final revenue source, which is the largest, which is comes from property taxes. So the effort tonight, or this afternoon, or this morning, has little or nothing to do with the budget. The budget was passed by town meeting. Absent extraordinary circumstances, the department heads and the board of selectmen, their job now is to implement that budget or execute that budget while being cost conscious. But this is not a review of the budget. We're not changing the town's budget in this meeting because we don't have the authority to do that. This is in the way of hopefully clearing up some misconceptions about town governance and financial management. So with that, I will let you lead us through everything that we need to know.
Thank you.
So Kevin, Owen, and I sat down and went through the budget from town meeting. And like you said, obviously, the county tax is just given to us, the school tax is 6 months of last year's budget, so then 6 months of this year's budget, you're exactly right. That number, when I add those 2 6 months, is $3,342,069.78. That's listed on line 10 of the assessments.
Go ahead.
Line number 7 is
Check my math.
line number 7 is the county tax, taken right from their declaration, 300,000. You said 811. The declaration said 765.49. Okay, all right. And the town budget. Now we start off with the gross town budget. 1,584,843 before any deduction. Now there's a difference between deductions and reimbursements only on this form. And I can get to that later. So the one little wrinkle we have here is we go down through from the top of this form. Line number 1 is all taxable real estate, 167,069,669. Taxable personal property, 1,120,832. Line 3 is the sum of those two lines. Line 4A. Now that is everybody's homestead exemption that has gone up to 25,000 this year. So the reason I have this for me is a little different than what we're used to seeing, is it line 4B, this is the change at the state level, the reimbursement amount for homestead this year is 70%. So line 4B is 70% of line 4A. All right? That's a little bit of a problem. I have another form here that I didn't share with all of you because it's just a little bit of explaining to do. It's a little shortcoming of Trio this day. Trio has not updated their software to reflect the 70% reimbursement. They are still at the 62.5% reimbursement from last year. Every town's gone through this. The Trio's begrudgingly said, we're not giving you the update until we get the update for all of our modules at the end of the month. So we have to do this twice. It's ridiculous. The only this form that I gave to you is the state's form to set the mill rate calculation sheet. They're exactly the same except for the 70% reimbursement on line 4B. So we can set the proper mill rate. We can get the proper numbers here. In the Trio version of the software, we can set the proper mill rate, but two numbers will be skewed. Totally fine. The only thing we can't do today is have commitment papers for you guys to sign. You're going to vote. My recommendation is you vote on the mill rate today. Today is the commitment date. We go through the process of proceeding along, getting the tax bills out. And they can do two things for you. One, when Trio updates their software, we can print out the proper commitment papers for you to sign. What I've done in a couple of the towns that I signed the commitment on, I print the Trio commitment papers as erroneous as they are, sign them, and right around the bottom below my signature, to be updated, and then we update and re-sign, whatever you guys are comfortable with. I'm right down the middle of my town. I just did a Zoom meeting yesterday with Belgrade. They set their mill rate. There's no commitment papers being set. They're running the bills as we speak, and once the software gets updated, we will rerun the commitment papers for you to sign.
When did you say you anticipate that software update
They
coming?
told us by the end of the month, but
This month,
yes, at the end of last month, they told us it would have been done by now.
right?
They
Okay,
just, so we'd see it in the next couple of weeks.
but we're not talking months.
No,
Okay.
no.
Yep.
And every town that I've spoken to, I've leaned on them to call Trio and push them along, and they're hearing nothing of it, which is frustrating. But it doesn't change. The mill rate set here. We can put the proper mill rate in the Trio module to produce the tax bills, and that'll all be fine. It's just, the difference will be on lines, we'll just assume, just for 1 minute, we'll set the mill rate that I put on line 19. The only reason that number was put down for this exercise is to give you an overlay equal to what was very close to what was last year. When you have the proper reimbursement amount on line 4B, line 21, homestead reimbursement is $121,260 and change. What the Trio version of that same form that I have that's erroneous, that puts that reimbursement amount at $108,000. All right. But with the proper form, choosing the mill rate that we put on there gives you that reimbursement amount. It gives you an overlay of $19,000, $19,321.57. If I can just show you quickly, Trio, I only have one copy of this. Trio's version of this is the same idea, the same net to be raised. All these numbers are the same through here, except for this is 7,062,000, where line 4B is 7,900,000 plus. But that lower number down here, it's a reimbursement of 108, where on that form it's 121. The overlay, if you added these two numbers together, those two numbers together, well, this reimbursement is just, I apologize, that's not the right word. This reimbursement's lower because of this lower number. But at the end of the day, we're still raising the same amount of money. So that's the only wiggle we have this year, as long as you guys are understanding of that. The numbers can match. This is a lower number compared to this number.
This is
Yeah,
based
which
on
means
the
a lower
62.5%.
reimbursement.
That's what's driving.
That's
It's all based
right.
on last
That's
year.
right, that's right. So long as you guys are understanding of that, there's no problem to proceed. So all we're basically talking about is setting a rate and setting an overlay. I know you've got some wiggle room with your undesignated funds that you add to this.
Well, we can check it.
But-
That's an arguable.
Yeah, well, so with the budget you put together that we have, with an overlay equal to last year, we have put a mill rate down here of $15.33. That would be the yellow box on line 19. That's up from 14 even last year.
14 even, yeah. But better than some other calculations, better than 1590, which I walked out of the budget meeting with. Yeah, questions so far?
Actually, I have several questions when you're done your presentation.
All right, well, I was just giving an example of something I do because the homestead has gone up. With the, just for, if we chose this mill rate that we're talking about now, somebody with a homesteader with an assessment of $200,000, value of 200,000, a $20,000 homestead. Last year's mill rate of 14, their tax burden was $2,520 on a $200,000 house. That same $200,000 house this year with the higher homestead amount and the higher mill rate is now $2,682. So it's up $160.
On a $200,000 house. Or assessed.
So
What was the difference?
100 and,
I can do it.
$162.75 more
Increase.
on a $200,000 house, and that may be on the lower side of average, but it's, you know, it's something to look at.
Okay, so I've heard several unconfirmed, but not found reducing. But if the state were to do that, it wouldn't affect us.
No, that's what Owen and I first started to talk about. See, on this calculation, line 21, that reimbursement amount is something that we rely on to the penny for this year. So we won't see any changes for this year at all. We can't, because unlike veterans exemption reimbursement, tree growth reimbursement, now this new renewable energy reimbursement, those come basically what I call off book. We get those as a matter of a reimbursement check at some point throughout the year. We don't exactly know what it is, and it's not necessarily a dollar for dollar offset. Well, should I say a 70 cents on the dollar offset? We count on that $121,000 to the penny to make our commitment happen to the penny. These are finite numbers that there's no way in the world, unofficially, the state is going to change this number this year because every town is counting on that to the penny. It isn't like revenue sharing where we anticipate we're going to collect X amount of dollars. We put the best estimate down there, and then we set a rate after that estimate is put in there. We set the rate, and then the mathematical calculation is going through here. The second reason they do this is if you do the math through here, the $121,000 for homestead and the $410 from Betty, that personal property that's not taxable. Those numbers aren't committed to your collector. Your tax collector is not responsible for collecting these numbers. And the state did it that way purposefully. They don't want to be under the gun for some sort of legal process. So I just know there's no way these numbers are going to be reduced because everybody's commitment would be short. If they end up dropping it to 20,000 next year, right, we'll be dealing with that. And we can have the conversation next year how that's a positive to the town. But anyway.
You have more faith in the legislature than I do.
I just, when it comes to this particular year, they can't, it's way too far down the road to change it. They just cannot. Towns are counting on this to the penny.
I know, but
The rev sharing, we may get a negative number.
I think given these times, I wouldn't count on anything with 100% degree of certainty. But I do agree with you, having said that we need to use that. Because that's what the current law is.
That's what the current law is. I mean, that's rev sharing is the number that everybody's scared of. You have no idea. But like Owen said, what we got in for a check this month was more than this same month a year ago, so it's just,
We're 7 months through that.
Well, so in March they came out and, and it was more or less pre-COVID. I think it was pre-lockdown. That ours was gonna be 126,150, something like that. My attitude towards that is, let's use 90, which we budgeted for, because we've got some other revenue weaknesses that if we get more state aid, they might overcome the other revenue shortfalls that we're going to, that we're no doubt going to experience. But that's me, with my green eye shades on. Keep it going, Rob.
all right, so we went through our assessments, our deductions are, we revetted these this morning. There's the $90,000 for the revenue sharing. We have to back that out of the budget because the state wants their props for giving us that money. So the line number 14 is the big one. We want to make sure it's right. The 1,013,000 and change. We went through the whole spreadsheet he had. That's the number that we're using from all sources other than property tax to reduce the commitment. So, and we do need to break up the $90,000 for there to give them their props. And remember that homestead reimbursement, Betty reimbursement are down below. So that's why that number is, when you add everything up, everything matches as it should be. So we take a gross budget on line 11 of 5.227 million, reduce it by a little over a million. So net to be raised by local property tax, $4,213,709.19. And as comparison, which I like to do, that same number last year was $3,825,634 and change. So that's where you see that's the hit. We had more, line 14 is up from this year over last year. Ultimately, when we finally decided to set a number, everything's up by that. So the end of the day, it was 3.8 million from taxes. This year, it's 4.2 million from taxes. And the line 16 through 23, this form was set up before we even had computers, and this just allows fail-safe. You get your minimum and your maximum. Once you set your minimum budget, you can set an overlay of up to 5% over your budget, which lines 17, 18, and 20 actually make sure that you are within those parameters. The maximum overlay we can have is on line 20 of $210,000 and change. To get that maximum overlay, we have a maximum mill rate of 16,023, which is on line 18. So as long as we pick a rate between 15,260 and that maximum will be proper.
We had from my view of history, so 4 years on the board, 2 years on the budget committee, an extraordinarily low level of abatements this year, which is what the overlay is for. Right? Any sense for why that was and what the future might hold?
Well,
And
I like to think that it's because we did our job correctly. But no, I mean, I think it just fluctuates every year, depending on if there were errors throughout the year. I mean, our job is that way. We don't see our errors typically until we commit. And then they all rise to the top. So one thing, and I'm sure you guys have talked about it, I mentioned it to Owen, we're kind of this year, especially, we're kind of being cautious about trying to ensure that we have sufficient overlay to cover abatements. Reason being, our field work this year was a little different than normal years, because of COVID. We, you know, we couldn't do things quite as we have in the past and the way that we like to do it. So, you know, there's a little bit more estimating this year than in past years. And so just to be on the side of caution, we'd recommend that we have access to additional monies if we need to issue abatements.
I could see a bunch of a bigger number of smaller abatements. This no contact style of assessing is very unusual, so we're doing everything from the roadside, or driveway side, I should say, pull up. So we may, if we're picking up some new houses, if the building permits are accurate enough, we're getting a good estimation on the size of the building. We're making estimates on finish, number of bathrooms, things of that nature that we would see if we had an opportunity to get inside the house. Those small listing questions may come up more frequently this year than other
Yeah.
years. But I don't think anything earth shattering. Well, I shouldn't say that, I don't really know, but I expect more questions of smaller amounts.
Yeah, and I think you're right.
But on the other hand, I've had a lot of fewer people that want to actually come in and ask these questions. They don't want to actually come in contact with people, but I think anything, if the usual amount, because the other thing, if we had a $20,000 overlay last year, that money does roll into the general fund, and if we had $20,000 this year, and Lord forbid, we have $30,000 of abatements, that eats up all of this year, but we have 20 from last year that was never touched, so it is theoretically there.
And just
Well,
Just to-
it went into surplus.
Right.
And just as a reminder, and I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other about what you all choose for the overlay, but just as a reminder, that town meeting, I think it was Article 28 or 29, did say that you can abate these properties by the overlay and if necessary, going into surplus. So you have a lot of flexibility on what you set for the overlay amount, reflecting the mill rate. If we somehow consume all of that, you are authorized to go into surplus and abate using that.
Well, I have one other question, and that is, I'm surprised at the relative year-over-year, no change to the total property valuation. Because last year it went up significantly.
Actually, I had it going down $1 million. Is that correct?
We lost, well,
Yes.
when the homestead, for every homestead, 459 homesteads,
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking the raw value on the building.
267.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It went down.
when we take 456 homesteads at $5,000 a piece, line number 3 goes up, but it comes out of line number 1. When your value goes,
Okay.
that's where it
all
comes
right,
from.
So, all right, so that's,
Yeah.
okay, that was one of my questions. So that, but the personal property went down too.
It does, depreciation and just the thing, the less and less of it. More items become qualifying for bet E. It does go down. That's very typical.
Actually, I have a couple other questions. if I
Go ahead.
could. One is, while we're talking about that, where are we at with our overall assessment ratio and particularly our quality rating? I know in the past here, shorefront property rises faster.
Would you? Yeah,
And
I know what
I'm
the quality
curious,
rating is.
we can get that.
where we stand there. Since we're talking about value.
Yeah. Well, our overall value is at 91% or above, because the only way we can give a full homestead is to be within, if we can certify 100%, our actual ratio has to be within 10% of that, just the way the state has that. The state gives you your developed parcel ratio, because if there's enough sales in this particular town, they'll have a separate study for residential property, commercial property, if there is, and waterfront property.
That's what I'm really.
And they'll, but if there's not enough sale data, they'll use a combined study. And if that combined study gives you a ratio of 91% or higher, then you could certify 100
Well,
and use that.
I mean, I'm okay with the 91% or 94, or even 60%, all of that was there, because everybody is being treated
Right.
equally unfairly.
That's right, that's
What
right.
I'm interested in is
Right,
the quality.
and even if we don't have, even if they don't have a separate study, I can show you from what the state gave us for a ratio study, where they are.
Well, while he's doing that, could I ask another question?
Sure.
I'm not, do you have a breakout on how you got to the 923 and the other revenues? Because when I took them off the budget, I came up with a significantly different number.
I can, yes.
And while we're related to that, I was curious if it included tree growth reimbursement of 3,000. Because I noticed we haven't got any reimbursement this year. We put in the audit report, we didn't last year. So I'm curious why we're still carrying that, if we still are. But the big difference is when I added up those three numbers across the bottom of the budget here, I came up with a significantly different revenue number.
Well, don't forget that revenue in your budget, spreadsheet includes homestead reimbursement.
I don't think so. Not here.
Yes, yeah, it does, 90,000.
No,
No, that's
revenue
revenue share.
that's revenue share.
Homestead reimbursement, I think was on there, wasn't it?
No, I'm talking about these numbers. There's no homestead in those numbers.
Correct. The homestead is included in that number. All of these state revenues total that 175.
Yeah, I get that. But he's got, well, I guess what I'd like to see is how you came to the the 923, 969.
All right,
I mean, do we have a itemization of that?
can you know that spreadsheet I was writing on?
Yes.
Spreadsheet, you want to grab that? All right, and I'll show you this one first.
What number do you get?
I had,
That.
no, maybe I'm the best thing to calculate.
If they got to that by anticipated revenue, plus excise, plus reserve, plus surplus.
So I added, maybe I missed one, but I added the 172, 185.
Yep.
388,000.
Yep.
90500. And 187,579. And that came to 828. 838, 269.
Oh, and then add in 175,700 less than 90. Because that's what he's saying, the state needs to get their dues on
Okay,
that.
so you've
So
included in the other revenues,
The
the homestead,
83,
the homestead.
these items right here.
So you've included the 80, obviously not the 90, because that's on the line above.
Correct, but the 80, the 3, the 2, 1.
Okay, so that's the big difference then.
Yep.
You've included in our revenue that reimbursement.
Home system.
Okay, so that gets us closer. And then what else we got? Are we carrying the $3,000?
Yes,
And why are we doing that? We haven't gotten it in 2 years or 3 years.
again, that's something I don't know why we're not getting, we're anticipating getting it.
That's definitely something I can look into of all the different items that I've been trying to clean up over time. That one hasn't been raised to my attention.
Well, we haven't gotten any this year, and we haven't, including to the audit, we didn't get any last year. I was gonna go back to 6 years before. Yeah. I mean, am I missing it on there?
There is some possibility that it comes in a check and gets accounted for as general, like clerical revenues, and that it's logged in someplace else. I'm not saying that that is what it is, but we can check into that and get you a satisfactory answer. Because you're absolutely correct. If we historically haven't been getting it because we had it on the books and someone removed it from tree growth.
Do we have any problems in tree growth stuff?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We should be getting some.
Yeah, and there's a good chance that we have like admin revenues and some of these smaller checks that aren't so consistent, it might be logged in there. I'm not entirely sure, but I can look into it.
Let's not speculate.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like, kind of little.
And so do you want to talk about quality?
Yeah.
The math work out now?
No, but it's closer.
How far are we off
So-
the 3,000?
I'd have to readjust my numbers, but.
You wanna go down
I
that
had,
way?
well, what did you say you had? Lost track.
Is there another one of these?
No, I got it.
No.
So I had,
You don't.
I had the 838, 269, so if you add to that 80, that's what you're calculating? Correct? 80,000 is what you're saying?
838, 269 plus what?
Did I put in an extra zero there? That would have been,
So the way he explained it to me,
that's 918.
this 15 is the growth budget. All of these items are bringing it down to this number.
Not all of these.
And then these, all of these bring it down to
Right,
this number.
right. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
This is why I brought that.
Yeah, because that gets me to, 918, and you guys are 923, so, okay, that's probably the 5,000, the 5, right. Yeah, that's the tree growth,
growth
the
and veterans.
veterans, and the Betty, and we did get veterans reimbursement. And I don't know about Betty, but that's only 600.
Betty is this number here. Betty's in
So
how it
that's
goes
not
down.
in there.
Should not be in there.
Okay, so that gets us even
Right.
closer.
So the 80, we're banding about for homestead reimbursement. In here, it's the actual number.
That's right, that's right.
It's not 80, it's higher.
So I have to take that, well, you budgeted 80, I have to take that 80 out, because we're accounting for it down here.
So, all right, I'm confused, because if we're talking 121, you got the 80.
2,800 in November of last year, we get it at the end of the year. In Trio, we have a specific tree growth one. Why it never made it into general revenues in our budgetary process, I'm not entirely
It's also not in the audit. You list the other little.
Yeah, that's weird, because it's in Trio. Phil just pulled it up. He said, "Do you want 18s?" I said, "No, I just want to know if we got it last year." And we did get just under 3 grand, 28 and change.
Good. But I just want to make sure we're not counting this 80 twice.
So if I take 15, 8, 8, 4, 8, 4, 3, which is the gross budget here, right?
Yeah,
This is the first, all of these added up, we're getting the budget down to this number. 7, 4, 6, 5, 7, 4. That's the 838, 269 you have. This plus this plus this plus this.
Yeah.
Is this number 838. All right,
okay.
which is these 4 items, that's the sum of those 4 items.
No.
That's the growth, that after
That's
taking off,
the
right, that's what I meant,
difference.
after taking off those 4 items.
Fees,
into this.
that equals that.
Right, but on top of that, he has in his budget, the way he accounts for everything is another reduction of 175, 700. Right, which is this
Well,
number
it's not a
here,
reduction of the budget, it's a reduction of the.
of appropriation,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right, but I can't, see what I have, the only thing revenue, homestead exemption, reimbursement's down here, Betty reimbursement is down here.
Then we can't count it.
I don't don't think I had up
Hey,
there.
this is wrong. You're counting it in here, that's what's getting it close to 923. You can't take it out, you can't put it in here.
It is,
It's in here. You see what I'm saying?
when I add these 4 numbers up here, right, 172, 185. 9505, 187, 579. That is 838,
269.
269.
That's what I know.
okay? That does not include any of these numbers. That is
That's
not
correct.
correct.
I got the 90s here, so that's fine. But if you're taking the homestead reimbursement,
There's no homestead, no, there's no, in these 4 numbers here, there's no tree growth, there's no vegetable.
but it was in here.
Sensible fashion with the numbers that we use. Set 2 on the them so that they can still feel. That could be the answer.
It's definitely a worthwhile exercise, being thoughtful about where things go.
Yeah.
It's definitely, as you understand the town better, but
Well, it makes confusion.
at the end of the day, it becomes confusing. I'm telling you, one of these days, I'll send you Jeff Northgrave's actual spread. It is you've seen Jeff Northgrave's bigger Excel sheet. It covers,
I don't know what function this has in the spreadsheet. So I just got this a minute ago. I haven't. I just want to make sure we're not copying.
Right now, right.
That's all I'm interested. I don't care about the tree growth from that.
I see what you're saying. I think it is in there, because when I had this 930, this 923 is this number, this cell minus this cell is 823, 853, like you had there. I took this additional 175 of appropriations. All I took away was the 90, so that 80 is in there. Yes, sir.
I think, again,
I haven't,
if I had this a day ahead of time, I could have looked.
Yeah, we can't reduce it like that.
But you could come the week before and do it. We do this every year.
Well, next year, if you're gonna be doing this at night,
I mean,
we're gonna do this a week ahead of time.
all
we're
I
gonna have it
wanted-
for a meeting.
this sheet. And I would have saved myself 4 hours last night. But, okay,
We can, if you're gonna start having this meeting at night, and we have these numbers ahead of time, we can give this to you. We can have a regular selectmen's meeting to talk about it, and then have a budget, and then have a meeting.
I'm not even saying it in there twice. I just
I think
suspect it might be.
I think you're right.
So like, I can't sit here and do it.
Right.
So I have some other questions. Oh, you're gonna talk about the.
Yeah, he's got,
what does that mean? Do I need to be doing something?
We'll have to go back and run that commitment, that knowledge sheet again.
But you understand
I
what's going
understand what
on?
it is. When
Okay,
I,
cool.
I'm not sure I'm right.
no, you are right, you are right. Because I was more concerned about those are the things that we look at. I backed up the rev sharing to give the states their proper rub. And now we look at it a third time, at 172.7, 172.5, whatever that number is.
Not sure.
That's including of homestead reimbursement, which is down below at the $121,000 number. That would have been, you're doing it right in your budget, because you have to put something in there, but when you have to back it out to give the state their recognition and not put that as part of the taxes to be collected by the tax collector, you do need to back that out.
The indicator of that is you're showing 1535, 1533, and the calculation coming out in January is 1590, and that 80 grand.
Probably about that. So I should hate to take your happiness away, Walter.
yeah,
It should be.
Understand that now, I'm glad you got it.
Well, and one of the things, just as an aside, Kevin and I have been talking kind of off and on all morning about the summary sheet of which the budget committee uses. We can continue to use that.
the one that Rob's referring to right there.
But it
Yeah.
then needs to be, Kevin and I, over the next year, need to spend some more time together to
That
then
has to be
take that
simplified.
and put it into a format that is easier for the assessors agents to do their job on this day. Because as much as I understand that document and the board and the budget committee understands it, it is a format that there is different than in most other towns.
Well, some of us don't use it.
Well, you just do it too. Yeah, every town does it differently, so it's like reinventing the wheel. Every time I show up here this morning, I know the obvious ones to look for. I like this because the details a little more transparent, which is what we try to do here, is make it as transparent as possible. And the bad thing is you don't know, when you do the budget process, you have no idea what the homestead reimbursement is gonna be. We had a town that the town clerk, nothing wrong with this, she decided to go through the commitment book and find everybody that had a local address that didn't get a homestead. And she sent out all these applications, didn't tell us, didn't tell the budget committee. We lost $200,000 of tax dollars because everybody got a new homestead, which they are deserving, but without planning for that,
Yeah.
you know, it's just like,
Well, I wasn't getting it until John Spear did this as town administrator. Yeah.
I also think we have some people that are still getting it that
Yeah.
have moved to Florida, but that's another issue.
All right, let's reconcile this because it's important.
I will get on to that. So Kevin.
Can you talk about the quality?
Yeah, it's right there.
It's right here. So, they did a combined study, they did in a separate study. So, we
We
can,
can't even read those small numbers.
All right.
with these aimed up glasses.
they would rather take 2 years of sale data
Yeah.
and break out the studies than is to keep a combined study, I understand. We'll start at the beginning, they did 2 years with the sales in town, they did a combined study with an average ratio of 94%.
Okay.
Of all types of property.
That's not bad.
Quality rating of 17, acceptable. What I look at is here, you see the class of property?
Yeah.
All we have is Rs and Ws, R is residential, W is waterfront. If all of our waterfront was in a really bad spot, they'd all be clumped up here, it goes from, let me rephrase it. When they run this report,
Goes from-
it
yeah, I
goes
get
from
it.
the lowest ratio to the highest ratio. So if we were systematically
Yeah.
had a lower ratio on the water, all the Ws would be clumped up here.
Right.
You can see they're pretty much spread throughout the province.
Matter of fact,
That's pretty
the
good.
bottom one is.
That's right. So there's your,
Could I get a copy?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'll give you three just to finish it.
Oh,
The residential, so we're at 94 total.
overall.
Just the residential properties, all the Rs in that same time period, we're at 97.
Okay.
With quality rating 15, 3 percentage points. Primo.
Yeah.
Really is.
Yeah.
Then we do just the waterfront and what they call water influence property, water view, water access, 90%.
Okay.
So, you know, that's not bad, the quality rating of 18. That's my response to that, that's pretty good, it's a pretty good close ratio, it does show you that since the reval was done, the waterfront is going up at a much faster rate. But,
Well, I think we adjusted it 1 year,
okay,
if I remember.
Okay.
Did we do some sort of across the board adjustment?
Not since I've been,
No, okay.
but
Which makes it
maybe
better.
prior.
All right, but it looks as though the trend is still holding.
it is,
Not,
it is.
yeah.
So our official recommendation would be there's nothing we really need
But
to
in
do yet.
terms of this year, we're certainly within a realm of acceptability.
We're very acceptable,
So what's the ratio that triggers the need for evaluation?
70%. When that combined study gets to 70%, that's when they mandate a revaluation. It also means that where we, and the teeth to that law is we start losing our tree growth reimbursement when we get below that 70% number. In this town, it's not a lot of money, but
But more importantly, though, the quality ratio. I mean, if everybody
Yeah,
gets
absolutely.
70%. like I
we
said
could all be
before,
at 50%, the quality rating could be 1, and
Right.
everything's perfect. And the crazy thing is, there's no financial penalty. That's fine, I'm sorry. There's no financial penalty if your quality rating is failing, which is ridiculous. You have
No,
to
but
better,
there's a moral obligation.
there's absolutely. So let me put this corrected number in here.
John, in the future, if you want copies of this,
Well,
just let me know. I'm happy to share it with you.
Well,
That's our desk.
yeah, I just got.
You're welcome.
I was hoping. to come
Any
talk
of
to
you.
next
As far as I can
It's kind of weird. Huh? Well, I have a couple more questions.
Sure.
Quick. Actually, I think I'll do one more, and that is, I can't seem to reconcile the fund balance. I come up with two different numbers that are based on the audit report and what Owen has on the budget sheet. That are $6,467 a ton. I found what that difference is. That's also the difference between what Mindy has for the Owl's Head, Thomas and Co-op, and the amount that was in the warrant that we transferred.
Did we not transfer the accrued interest?
That was actually a question, because the audit report, you're absolutely correct, from the number that I've found in the audit and what we use in the budget was off by roughly that $6,000.
$6,467. You went the other way. Not a huge deal, but, again, I was just trying to reconcile some of these numbers and.
I don't know if there's, because you know better than I do, the surplus is a snapshot.
And I don't know if we generated something into the budget process that was post Mindy and incorporated something to have that $6,000 discrepancy.
No, I don't think that's the difference. I think what we transferred in the warrant is $6,467 less than what
Less
Mindy had.
than what Mindy had.
So either, my only question is, which one is the right number? Because if this is right, we got $6,427 more in sort of unrestricted surplus, or, again, not a huge deal, but.
Be good to know.
Yeah. And I think that was all my questions, I think.
Yeah, so the 597, 792 was absolute
The 597
In the
Right.
audit report.
in the audit report,
with page on.
64.
Cost. Thank you. No, that's other governmental funds. Are we talking, the other side is 584,214.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're in the wrong column.
Yep.
But that's okay. But the 159 is only what was in the warrant, which is the one four something,
Yeah.
153,479.
Yeah.
Then we got. Again, I don't know which is the right number. I'm assuming the audit number is, but
No, the audit numbers correct. The 153,479, I think we correct that back. That's the MRC reimbursement.
Yeah.
But we also got PERC reimbursement that layered into that same account. I think that's what we'll find out when we do that.
No, but they're the same, PERC and the MRC, there's like one and the same.
No, they were two separate checks.
The put option, you're talking the put option?
Yeah,
they're
no.
two different companies, for sure, entities.
We got two different checks to settle things with.
Okay.
So the warrant should have been the one. Okay, so we have, so the audit report is correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have for surplus. God, I gotta get stronger glasses or get rid of this math.
Starting surplus of 584,214, we spent some.
Yeah, in this budget. Yeah, and how much did we spend? We spent 187, 579.
Plus that, the difference between 34,
30 something is what we offset.
33.
You had 6, 7, 14, 5. We had those
137.
137.
I thought the total surplus in the budget was 187.
Yeah, but that included the,
Where's all I know about the survey?
Oh,
That's the
I'm with you,
budget.
I'm with you. So how much did we spend?
30 something. I can't remember.
That one's good.
Okay, so, okay, that's good. I thought we spent a lot more. Nope. So we spent the 187 off the 744. Okay, good.
so our net surplus is.
Where I'm going is I just want to see what we have if we choose to use it more. Just 1562.
It bumps it up 9 cents, 8 cents. 33 bucks. Yes. As you can see, it puts the reimbursement of homestead and levy up just a bit.
Yep.
Just a bit. So that scenario I gave you, that $200,000 house. 2733.50 over the 2650.
I'm sorry. What was
I'm half remembering what it was. You took that, the $200,000 assessment, reduced it by the homestead, and then you apply this new potential mill rate of 1562. The new tax burden would be 2733.50. And last year, that same property was 2520, even at 14 mill rate.
So that's an increase of 2,
2.7.
Yes.
212, am I right?
$213.50.
I didn't do it.
That's an 11.5% increase in the mill rate.
And 33,400 is what I come up with on the use of the surplus.
Me too.
Say that again.
33,400 is what I come up with if you take out the 154. Okay.
Yep.
I just want to make sure.
So that brings it down to 558.14.
Oh, thank you.
Now we have to recalculate a monthly spend, but that's less than 2 months worth of spending. If you look at spending as actually writing checks to pay our bills, so take out reserves that were self-funding, take out surplus 33,400, and then look at the monthly spending nut. It's more or less 1.4 months of coverage. It's 558.14. I did it with different numbers last night and came up with 1.35, but I'm going to recalculate. And in terms of percentage of the commitment, the sheet you gave us, right? So 4293709, that's the commitment. Yes.
4189135, line 19.
63. And that's a 15,620 mill rate. And what did you say that percentage increase was?
11.5.
roughly.
That's too much.
Always been. They voted for it.
Wow.
The remaining surplus constitutes 13% of the commitments and 1.4 months of spending. So I think what's on the table here is, will this board take any action, further action to reduce the amount collected from property taxes?
I'd like to.
Go ahead.
I'd like to see what 80 and maybe 75 and 100,000 surplus would do. Additional surplus would do. Is that something we can do fairly quickly?
So all three versions, 75, 80,
Two,
100?
I just said two.
Okay,
First I said 80, then I changed it.
All right, so 75 and
100. I
100.
can extrapolate.
all right. And the overlay, you want to keep right around 20?
Yeah.
Okay, 75.
Only deal with one.
Does anybody else want to see another number? What he's-
No, let's do it. That's what we typically do.
So what was, I read this, what was the final surplus number?
558.14. Net of 14.
I'm just taking a step outside to catch a fresh air.
55,814.
550,000.
There you go. 550.
I wish I had been able to provide you all what the county's surplus was. Though it's almost doesn't matter, the school and what their surplus would be something more we would want to know, but they don't have a surplus, they have a negative fund balance.
Know how that would factor into my thinking as a taxpayer.
As it relates to our biggest payment and the ability for the individual of which we make those payments to, their ability to absorb if we needed to find funds in other places, their ability to not get our check immediately go into their own surplus to cover that. We're not necessarily in that position as it relates to the school.
Did we ever get again the number of South Thompson students in RSU 13?
No, though I did talk with Lane Sturdivant, she's very accessible. I'll get that, I'll resubmit that question to her. I need to send her an email anyway.
I'm slow to divide that into the 3.3 million that we're paying. See what the cost per student is, because we probably could send them to a nice private school.
So Sherburne, Massachusetts, which is where my kids grew up, has arguably and demonstrably the best public school system in Massachusetts. And they win or in the top 5 of the US. Their cost per student in a system where every kid goes to college, except maybe one every year, is less than RSU 13.
I'm not surprised at all. I guess I was appalled when I sort of put that in perspective. I don't know why it didn't dawn on me before.
It is a little bit of a head
But
scratcher.
Carol and I did some, just back in the envelope, we figured it was something like 40 to 45,000 per student.
Well, and
I'm
when
thinking, get
when
those
you
guys
then-
40,000 and
when you
save
then
us some money and they all can go to private school.
well, then you acquire an old school building and you're like, you know, we have a school building. We could really do a lot with.
No, we don't have a school building. We don't even build it. It wasn't a school building.
That's one of the
As soon
options
as they
there.
moved out of it, it became something else.
Kevin has the 75 and I have the 100. And as you can imagine, we took, we found that $80,000 discrepancy, took it off, added it back in, so taking 75 of the surplus would basically give you
That's right.
the original number we came in with within I think 100. Yeah, 75.
$75 gets you what?
I have 2 copies of the same thing.
1526, I gotta make sure I got it.
1526. No,
No,
15,
15,
15,
5-3, should be.
15,
You should have that.
1535.
Yeah.
1535 is a $19,844 overlay, and 100,000 would give you 1526.
And can you quickly tell me what the percentage increases are from last year on that? On those two?
Yes.
You seem to be quick at that, so.
Maybe right around 11.
9% on the 026. And 9.6% on the 035.
looking for any discussion or anything, or?
Going to discuss it, we should have a motion.
All right, I'll move we apply an additional 100,000 to a surplus to reduce the mill rate.
You don't understand it. So we're at, let me take us down to 450,814 surplus. And what were the figures again? I know I have the discussion before I second, but I can't second it, be conscious of the numbers. What was the minimum we needed in surplus to be able to carry 2 months of, if we wanted to look at that?
I have to recalculate a month's total spending.
Yeah, roughly, what was it?
It's not 2 months worth. It's less than 2 months.
I think he said 1.4.
Well, I did it, yeah, but we've changed the numbers.
Okay.
So we have less than 2 months worth of,
Right, and if you look at, you take 458.14. Divide that by the new commitment, is that 409,2587? His motion,
Tax for commitment, yes, 4092.
so that's 11% of commitment. So if you're gonna second the motion, second the motion. But then we can discuss
okay, I'll second the motion. Let's continue the discussion.
it. Okay. Make the case.
I want to keep, in this day and age with all that's going on and with COVID, and I'm just trying to get this as low as I can get it and feel relatively safe. I think we have a healthy surplus as it is. And I think we can afford 100,000. You know, surplus, I view it as sort of something for a rainy day, and I think it's foreign. And I just am not happy going out with a more than 10% mill rate increase. I don't see anything on the horizon in terms of the remainder of this year, which is, you know, particularly after your discussion about the homestead, which was my biggest concern. That feel that's pretty safe. I'm not as confident as you are, but I agree that if all these cities and towns have set their mill rates, it's gonna be a real heavy lift to change that. I think Owen's convinced me that the revenue sharing is doing well, perhaps even better than we budgeted. I've read a couple articles lately about auto sales that's doing well. I haven't heard of any town expenditure that we're potentially facing that's of an emergency nature that wouldn't be covered by insurance or something. Correct me if I'm wrong there. So I just think it's the right thing to do. With a lot of people are going to be losing their unemployment in another week or two here, and I'm just trying to keep this as low as possible. Jan?
Well, my fear is that next year, if in fact the homestead exemption goes down, and I can see us having to do a significant increase next year. Because I don't think we can continue to pull from our reserve. As you say, it's a rainy day fund, but my fear is that when the rainy day comes, we won't have the fund.
But I think it's foreign.
I think monsoon is coming.
Well, I'm hoping
Can I
that,
speak?
you know,
Sure. Okay, so, halfway through the year, we have only achieved 30% of our ambulance budget. So that's $70,000 that, we're gonna have a shortfall there. So double it. We have no reason to believe that any more or fewer people are gonna get sick and need the ambulance service in the second half of the year than in the first. So that's a $30,000 shortfall in revenue. Excise tax is an uncertainty, but we've only collected 40% of excise tax of the year. And when we were on the seminar with the experts or people that know a lot more about municipal finance than I do. They said expect a 20% shortfall in excise tax collections this year. So that's 20% of $380,000. And, you know, I'll say this, I've said this before, spending is certain, revenue is uncertain. I want to hedge against uncertainty, and I oppose this motion. Owen?
All I wanted to say was in previous years, we had done our kind of TAN process that we'd historically done with the school payments raising. We recently had to do the borrowing through Machias to be able to make all those payments. We'll get all that money back when we collect property taxes, and we'll pay all that back and we'll be fine. As I've indicated to you all, likely this is something that we're going to have to do going through 21 until we can switch from the calendar of the fiscal year and possibly and hopefully collect taxes twice a year to kind of smooth some of that out. So I throw that out there just as the thinking that we have engaged with Machias on this borrowing. What the town will be out is the additional interest of doing so, the interest payments of doing that. And that relates to that surplus money as our ability to do cash flow management. If we weren't already anticipating having to do some borrowing from Machias to manage that, and we could still do it the way that we wanted to, then I would have more concerns about surplus drawdown. Again, this is your all's way that you want to do it, and just kind of on the operational end on how we're going to manage cash flow. Under different scenarios, I would be very cautious on drawing down of additional surplus because we kind of depend on that to manage cash flow. However, we've kind of moved into this year, regrettably, knowing that we're likely going to be needing to do borrowing from Machias at an interest rate that is very acceptable. But basically, if you drew down that surplus and limited our cash flow, we'd have to do more borrowing. And so basically what the town is out at that point is the additional interest on that borrowing.
Good point. Any further discussion? All right, it's been moved and seconded that we allocate $100,000 of surplus to reduce the tax commitment by $100,000. All in favor? All opposed? Now let's look at the other scenario.
75. That would change that mill rate to $15.35. Very similar overall. I don't have that sheet.
If you don't have one on it.
I don't think so.
1535.
Yes.
Which is still under 10%, right?
9.5%, right. And just while you guys are discussing, the 1526 that was decided against, that would have made a $200,000 house with a $150 increase. That same house with this new mill rate proposed, $166.25 increase.
Some of us don't use $200,000 house to do this calculation.
When I thought it was 100,000 every time.
I know. I was gonna use 250. I was gonna use 100,000 and do multiples, but yeah.
I only know one calculation for that.
Happens to be
Okay, so this is $75,000 with
75.
the surplus.
That's
Just at the 550,814.
Yeah, I'm gonna deduct 75 from that. Oh, we should have a motion rather than. Is there a motion on the 75,000?
I don't know.
You're an all the way or no, your way or no way, huh?
I did my motion.
Yeah.
There's another person.
Piece of paper in front of you. So the 1526 rate. That wasn't with 75,000.
That,
That was with 100.
that was 100.
That was the 100.
The 1535 is the one you want right now.
Okay. And the original one that we had was the
Was also
1562.
Yes.
So we're looking at a difference of 30 cents per thousand. And it drops us down to 400 and, I don't know, what did we say, 475,000?
Basically,
left.
yeah.
And without anything, we were at 11.5.
11.5% increase
Yeah.
over last year.
And what the 75 would bring us back to that 9.9.5.
Basically, a couple percentage difference there. The two scenarios.
I'll make the motion to reduce excrement by 75,000 in surplus.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion?
I'll be candid and say I still have reservations about using the surplus. I also share some of John's concerns that 11.5 is a pretty big increase in 1 year. I'm worried about next year. John?
I'm worried about next year too, but I just can't in conscience vote for something that's over 10%.
Yeah, I think. So I've done some amount of research on surplus policy and financial management policies, and I've looked at a whole lot of towns. And one thing I found is that many towns actually have a written policy for how to handle, and I hate the term surplus because it's unexpended, unrestricted funds in the treasury. In Massachusetts, we call it free cash in the treasury, and that was a red flag.
That's a
Okay,
worse
so-
number.
Other people's money, because it's not free, right? So I do believe that it may be raining today, but it could pour tomorrow. I have settled on two personal rubrics for surplus. One is 2 months of spend coverage, and the other is 12% of commitment. This is close to the one, but not to the other. And then, of course, I just did the personal calculation. And I'm in favor of the motion. So those are my thoughts. It's been moved and seconded that we apply $75,000 surplus. Owen?
And just maybe not right now, but at some point, I'd love to just better explain some of the things I've been hearing anyway about the federal government and the state government as it relates to revenue shortfalls and grant opportunities and things that the town will be working on or things that we hope come down the pike. Not necessarily applicable right now because it's speculatory in nature, but there is a lot of discussion in the municipal circles about what the federal and state government can do to make sure that we're doing no harm at a minimum, maybe not making forward progress like I indicated in my email to you all, but there's a lot of stuff swirling around. It's all speculation, but at some point in
Because they don't
time,
have any more money than we do.
well, we don't have a printing press.
They keep running these $1 trillion bills at the federal government level.
You know,
So
There's been discussion about this second stimulus package and a lot of advocacy that money flowed directly to municipalities. There's been talk about any sort of, showing consistency in revenues and then showing a consistent drop and it being across the board, the state helping supplement or augment that gap. They opened up the second round of the Keep Maine Healthy grant, like I indicated to you all. I'm going to be applying for that and asking for some additional monies there. There's the FEMA stuff. So none of it is firm and it is all speculatory. However, we will make every effort to try to make sure that we recoup and or make as close to whole as we can our revenues and continue to be smart about our expenses.
So speculating that the government's gonna knock on our door and say, I'm from the government, I'm here to help.
Give it here, let me give
In
it
a
some money.
state where the legislature can't even agree to meet in the middle of one of the worst fiscal crises in the history of my lifetime. And when the federal government, Congress people might as well be coming into session with guns and knives to go at each other. Let's deal with the reality of the motion. It's been moved and seconded that we allocate $75,000 to reduce the tax commitment. All in favor? The motion passes. So,
I move we set the mill rate at. Can you give me the number?
15,
35.
$15.35.
Yes. I got so many sheets. Actually, I guess I should say I move we set the 2020 mill rate at 15.35.
Is there discussion? I just want to share some observations, if that's okay. As part of this discussion. I was shocked at town meeting at the few people voted opposition to a budget that year over year goes up by 15.3%. Shocked. Before that, I
I
was
attribute
shocked.
that to our salesmanship in that budget prior to the meeting.
Yeah, there's that. I was equally shocked when, as chair, I asked to review that budget in anticipation of perhaps reducing it, and that only 2 members of the budget committee and 1 member of the board select board was at all interested in entertaining that process. So when I first came to town, I heard a lot about that we're parsimonious and that we don't like to spend money and we don't like to raise taxes. Boy, do I personally feel it when we raise taxes. But the voters have told us to raise taxes and spend money. I'm shocked. That's all I can say. I'm shocked.
I have one comment before we go. I am very pleased at the job that RSU 13.
Yes. I will concur.
I don't do that. I have to talk more about that, because I need to understand that.
Wow, their increase was minimal.
Why would it increase at all? I mean, that's what I say. Wasn't there some promised savings as a result of consolidation?
I think we achieved a lot of savings. I disagree.
We haven't seen it at the municipal level.
Oh, I think we have. I think, it's not a conversation for today, but when you said that last week, I almost said, not all board members agree with that. I think in the first 3 or 4
I
years,
wasn't speaking for the board.
I think in the first 3 or 4 years, if you took the 2 combined budgets of the SADs and put them together and then looked at the RSU 13 one, was significantly lower, but that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, part of our education, part of our educating lane, as well as
I
ourselves.
welcome it, but please, we should talk about it sometime, because I need to educate as well.
Okay, did we vote on the mill rate?
No.
No. All in favor?
Nobody's opposed. Okay,
So
$15.35.
Kevin, thank you so very much.
Anytime. Couple questions from
One
me.
time, every year.
Yeah, one time. So streamlining this process going forward, you talk about having a meeting at night, you mentioned that you like to see these numbers ahead of time. There's no real reason that we could move up our finalizing of our numbers a little bit, a couple weeks. Sit down with Owen earlier on, put together a tentative spreadsheet for you guys to look at at your leisure prior to a meeting. Even if it was presented to you in a selectmen's meeting before the meeting you want to set the mill rate. That way you guys can discuss it over time and not feel rushed to do it all in 2 hour time frame. It's just think about it, that procedural change we can do easily enough. Now, when it
I'd
comes,
be very much in favor,
Yeah.
because I like to sit down at my home, with me looking over my shoulder with my computer and run through the numbers.
I mean, it's the biggest decision you guys make all
I
year,
know, right?
so you don't want to rush it. Like I
Exactly.
said, I do it, this is my fourth one this week, and every time I'm handed a sheet, it's always different.
Yeah.
Trying to understand it.
Yeah.
And like I said, those sheets work well for that individual town, everybody does differently, they're all good. But when you're looking for something to try to find an overview of it, that's where you can miss things, but that's why we have more than one set of eyes. For this year, do you guys want commitment papers to sign that we know they have to change, or you just want to wait and sign them? The commitment happened today, is the official date.
Let's sign the official document.
Yeah, I prefer that.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm comfortable
okay,
waiting.
all right, all right.
I mean, as long as it's not gonna be months.
It should be by the time we get back. We won't return until we hear from the town that tax bills are out and everybody's tells us what a good job we did. I know by the time we get back, that software will be updated. The same procedure that produced the Trio version of this, we just go back in, open it back up. Everything will change automatically. We'll print the commitment papers at that point with today's date on it.
Do you think that there's a good chance that might be available for their August 11th meeting?
I would, based on what Trio told me, it's supposed to be done by the end of the month, so I'd be confident-ish that it would be ready by then.
So then at your all next select board meeting, you should have the finalized official papers to sign. But we'll move forward on sending out tax bills prior to that,
Right. Well,
prior to the final signing of the official commitment papers.
you're gonna send out the tax bills before we commit?
You've committed.
You
yeah.
just committed.
Commitment happened today at this vote. Just a matter of the commitment papers.
The mill rate is set, everything is determined. It's because of an internal software error that you cannot sign the official.
I'm not comfortable with that.
Okay, then I need to go back out to Machias and borrow more money.
That's mine, and having a commitment that's invalidated, because we don't sign it.
Is this
Not
an
invalid.
invalid
No,
commitment?
like I said, you can have
It's finalized.
the commitment papers that I signed this year through Trio. I put to be updated in my signature. Again, it's a comfort level that the board has to have on this sort of thing.
I thought we just decided we were gonna wait.
Yeah, we did.
We're waiting,
You're not comfortable
not
with that.
wait to send bills. We want to get the bills out now. So you want to sign the to be updated version of the commitment papers?
Not particularly. It's like two poor choices. All right,
And there's
okay, but,
the end of the month, which puts us over our.
okay. I think one of the worst things we can do is send out a commitment that someone could challenge.
There is that.
We're sending out
What
tax
would be the
bills.
basis of the challenge?
That we haven't executed the commitment properly.
Well, then I would recommend that we go ahead and sign it as is, then update it as the change occurs. Because that is the commitment as of today.
Yeah, I guess that's what, if I had understood that was the case, I think that's the lesser of two evils.
Can you print those off?
Yeah. Just give me the, just unpaid interest is 8%, right?
Unpaid.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
delinquent
I
taxes
also have.
But-
is 8%. Yep.
Right. Yeah, you the collector and the treasurer both,
No, tax collector is Chelsea Summers.
SEA,
Yep, Summers.
like Suzanne, all right,
Yep.
and then you're,
And then I'm the treasurer.
and due date, commitment date's today, due date is,
October 1st.
interest starts the next day,
Yes.
unless it's a Saturday.
It's not.
It's not. All right. Give me a second.
So let me modify my comment about shop. Nothing in this budget was either unnecessary and not urgently needed. So everything in the budget that we did was absolutely warranted. I just think, again, you're right. Either that was obvious to everybody or we sold it down. Scares me.
I had a lot of.
Scares me.
Speak for myself.
77 people. Have a couple, just.
But I do think we explained it well, and I think, I'll speak for myself, I had lots of pre-meeting conversations about the budget with neighbors and people that, I think it was a challenging decision for people to make, but I think under the circumstances, it was the right decision because, in the long term, it'll benefit the town significantly. But, it's hard, when the alligators are at the water's edge, it's hard to remember you came to drain the swamp, as they say,
I think a lot of people weren't focused on that type of stuff as well. They're focused on family and health issues and their concerns and making a living.
Yeah.
And I think you may see a little more commentary when they get almost a 10% increase in the tax bill. That's been my experience in the past, is that's the bigger microphone.
John, adjustment to the agenda you have?
Yes, I wanted to briefly talk about the newsletter. It's my understanding we decided that the newsletter at the last meeting is going to go out with the tax bills. And since they'll be going out before we meet again, or close to that, I assume, I feel that the citizens deserve a little update on what's happening at Guilford Butler, and actually more importantly, what isn't happening, how we delayed it. I've had a few questions about that. What's going on? But, and I'd be willing to draft a short little article just to update where we stand and circulate it to 2 or 3 for review and comment. If that would be agreeable to folks. I've had several people say, what's going on? What's going on? And basically, my answer is, well, we just delayed everything for a year.
And we ought to say why. I mean,
Yeah, no, I would.
telling the logic behind it.
But I just, and my understanding is correct. We are going to send a newsletter with the tax bills, right? We talked about that the last time. Okay.
And actually, we were talking about that this morning because of various different personal life things. We're kind of behind a little bit on generating that newsletter. The format and everything's done. What we were talking about this morning was a review on some of the items. We know that you all had indicated you wanted to see certain items included in that newsletter. So I know it's on tape. It was one of the things we talked about this morning. Hey, we need to get that done. Again, it's most of the way as far as formatting and some of the items that we know we want to include in there. But could we get a reminder from your all's brains about one of the things you wanted to see or various things? And then I can review. I know it was on one of the board meetings, you all talked about some things you wanted to see in the newsletter. We might have to be a little choosy because to keep weight down for postage, we wanted to keep it on a single sheet, double-sided.
Oh, boy, that is a short one.
A single.
I don't think that should be a concern.
I think it's more
If
important.
there's
to get the information
content,
out.
if there's meaningful content. We don't worry about those.
I mean, having written several of those, 4 pages is cramming. I mean, 2 sides on 2 pages,
Zucchini recipes.
Well, those didn't happen
We don't do
all
that.
the time.
So there,
Although people like those.
I know. I'll take you up on your offer, John,
Okay.
and I will do a budget,
Yeah.
a mill rate setting
That would be
memo,
good.
which we'll also put on the web. And then, well, we're up, so let's circle back now that you've put me back in this chair. We've also had a discussion and a suggestion of fireside chats over the internet. What's going on, which would not be meetings. It would be yours truly or one of you guys who that maybe rotate. And, you know, to kind of get out ahead of stuff like what's going on with Guilford Butler. So there's a newsletter which comes out once or twice a year. But we can do fireside chats as often as either Owen can hook up YouTube or I can just do Zoom and hook up YouTube. And the other thing that I was thinking of is to set up a schedule of being here on some regular basis for people to drop in and have a chat with me.
I'm fine with that. You're talking about putting that as a question in the newsletter, would people like to see that, or?
No, I'm just throwing that out as making an offering.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm fine with that as long as one of us doesn't hold ourselves out as speaking before the board.
Right.
You know, and I think that sometimes that happens, you know, you'll be in a meeting and I'll say something, and then 2 weeks later, someone will say, well, the board said this. And I said, no, the board didn't say that. I said that.
Yeah, I mean,
And that gets,
I got one the other day and I went back and said, no, you don't understand. You know, the Three Musketeers have to act as one.
Yeah, that might be something that you want to touch on in the newsletter, though, John. I think offer, is there an interest in this? Because I mean, how many people did we have on this meeting?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. You're gonna, well,
yeah.
but.
But at least you offer.
Right. But that means you couldn't offer. And one of the challenges in this town, and like I said, I'm in discussion with my friends in St. George, is that both these towns have incredible numbers of taxpayers who don't vote and therefore don't get involved in the municipal budget. Yeah. And they're the ones that tend to complain when they get that 10% tax rate. No, really. And they haven't been part of the discussion, they haven't voted. And it's like, oh my gosh.
Well, it's not that they don't, they can't.
Well, that's right. And that's a whole nother.
Right.
Well, they can if they want to.
Well, no, they could move you. Get that homestead exemption.
Do you have the papers?
Yeah.
And the correct and incorrect mill rate behind it, so you put it all in one package, just trying to, again, ease up on the comfort level. When the Board of Selectmen assessors make a motion with what's in front of them to set commitment, that makes a valid commitment. We've had the case in many towns where we've had to change our public record for one thing or another. I think we found an error one year, we had to make a attestation and then new public record. This is really no different than that, so the commitment, there's no way this process is gonna create this commitment to be legal or contestable, if you will. It was just that vote today, and when, even at the end of it, once it gets vetted through the auditor, and even if we found something that was different and the overlay ends up being something different than we anticipated today, as long as that overlay isn't over the maximum, it is a valid assessment, and will not, it couldn't be contested that way.
Separate subject, but something I want to close the loop. It was brought up to us that there were restrictions on, I forget how the phrasing came about. Let me just jump. Borrowing from the trust funds as part of our TAN process. And the biggest one is the scholarship trust, which is $300,000. We have the precedents of the Historical Society asking us to give them $1,000 investment. Can't do it. But what she did say was that we could do it as trustees, but not we, select board, but the trustees. So we're also the trustees of the scholarship fund, which means that a TAN is an investment by definition because it pays us 1.5%. So I just wanted to see if you guys concur with that interpretation. Since she's already told us we could do it with one piece of that will, why wouldn't it apply to all the others?
I absolutely agree. I think we have I can't think of a more solid investment.
I do too.
You don't like the yield on US treasuries?
No, I mean solid in terms of reliability.
Right. No, I agree. Always have.
One signature page, no.
That is 3. 4 signatures total.
4.
Any other
So
amazing?
going back to your newsletter discussion,
Yep, that's exactly what I was gonna ask.
we- John has something to do, Walter's got something to do. What else do you need for the newsletter?
I wanted to include some things about road projects. I would love to say that we got the grant for the courts, but we're not there. I submit that grant at the end of this month. Basically, things that would be substantive to
We did
segments
get a grant, a reimbursable grant, reimbursement grant.
for,
I don't know. If you,
oh, the taking of the obsolete, damaged
yes.
fish
the
gear.
Lobster traps.
Yep,
That ought to be something we tell them.
definitely, I will include in there that we are not ready to go live with that. We have
But it's
received, yep, we've received the grant. I've been continuing to work with the Island Institute, Fisherman's Co-op, Atwoods, the hauler and all that stuff, and Jerry to prep the site. We're just not yet at a place to accept that waste, but yep, I'll communicate that. The road project, especially where that's going to be in inconvenience for folks getting off and on the island. I'll
Do you have
communicate.
any timing on that yet?
Nope, Gartland and Dorsey's continuing to work on that. As far as like construction time, we're still anticipating springtime, as soon in spring of 21 as we can.
That's what I would tell them, that I wouldn't get into the delay and all that stuff.
No, just
Still unknown.
getting out in front of it that, roughly spring of 21, single lane traffic, there will be stops, but you will not be restricted in your access. This is what the project looks like, generally speaking. Try to keep everything kind of minimalist in nature, but
Yeah.
make sure that the newsletter includes a lot of, town directory, the ability to gather more information online, all that stuff.
Is the website up to date, speaking of that?
Um,
New appointments in there and all that.
Yep, we got the bulk of the new appointments. I'm not gonna say that it's 100% accurate. We're always getting corrected here and there. There's still some shellfish, some of the shellfish. What's that?
How about minutes? Are we up to date on minutes? Town meeting information and minutes. And
Chelsea's working on the town meeting minutes right now. We're not up to date on all those. There's still some outstanding
coming up
meetings,
to 30 days late after the meeting per minute.
probably on some of them, sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's wrong.
Yeah, I think we gotta get better at that. There's gotta be a better priority, gotta be a higher priority for you. And if you're torn on that, then you need to talk to us and say, well, this is what's taking my time, and let us help set the priorities.
Yep, we had a really good plan and it was working well. Again, because of personal reasons, it became a bit of an overload for some folks.
I want to push back. Doing the minutes and publishing the minutes is your responsibility. I don't see it as something you delegate to Chelsea and then tell us that because she had a personal situation, that those things didn't get done. I personally think you're accountable. And while we're on the subject, in August, we committed to putting the department heads' reports online. And it was done in September and hasn't been done since.
In August?
In August. Last August.
Oh, I'm thinking of when I didn't know.
Don't get me going on the website. I want to have that as a discussion at the next meeting. And my advice will be that the town administrator should spend an hour a day on the website, updating, putting new content up. And if you miss a day, then you do 2 hours the next day, but we'll get into that discussion.
Back on the road project, just for a second though, I do think the questions I'm getting are not so much like where it's being funded from, what's happening is how is it gonna impact me getting on and off the island?
Right.
So I think if you could focus on that, that would be.
Yep.
You know, how long is it gonna take roughly,
Yeah.
am I gonna have a long wait?
There are pictures of the project on the website now, right? The ones that we got for the town meeting.
Oh, the plans?
So people can go and see where it's gonna impact and so on.
And I also think we could do a little quick, little tiny blurb, even though you don't have the grant yet, on the tennis courts and the fact that they're gonna be.
Just that we've applied for a grant.
Yeah, and then they're gonna repair it to some extent. But people ask about that.
That became a little bit of a,
You may go.
Your excuse.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Thanks, Rob. Thanks.
I hope you go back and find I was wrong on the 80,000. We'll change things.
I'm sure glad you caught that now.
Well, we'll see.
Any other items? Strange your, your adjustment to the agenda.
No. When do you want? I mean, I'll try to do that within a few days. That'll be acceptable.
yeah, if you can get it to us by maybe the end of the weekend,
I'll try to do that. yeah.
because what we're gonna try to do is have everything prepped and ready to
Yeah.
start finalizing and sending things out at the beginning of next week.
And if anything else,
Do we need to sign the changes in the room use or any of that stuff?
Mm,
Is that all taken care of? We all done with that action?
yes. Oh, the transcribing of it?
We.
You made amendments to that
we made
PDF.
amendments to the use of community room and one other thing that doesn't come to my mind.
Stump dump
The
policy,
stump
but you
dump policy.
signed stump dump.
Okay.
And the changes, I thought I had you all sign,
I don't think so. I'm not sure they were signed. were they?
well, I was gathering signatures
I don't know.
over time. Didn't you sign it when you came in one of those times? I'll
I don't know.
pull that. We're not, I've only received one request to use the community room and it's for September. So that's, I can check that now if you want me to, and possibly get you all to sign today. Or, I mean, we have some cleanup work to do at our next meeting for appointments.
Make sure that deck is cleared, that's taken care of, or bring it back to the August 11th.
Appointments?
I personally would rather sign document at meetings, which is what it's supposed to be done.
Right, I agree.
And again, those things need to be posted on the website. That's the other thing.
Mhm.
Leads me to that. So if they're ready to be published.
Okay. Any other business?
Motion to adjourn? Yeah. So move.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Thanks, guys.
Yeah, good
It
job.
was wide ranging.
Yes, thank you, John. I'm very pleased that you challenged a new set of eyes is always good on this thing.
Yeah, well, I don't like,
I've done it enough times that I kind of look at it, and go, oh, I got this, I understand this.
we